Whoa, that was abrupt. I just thought we would still snap a little bit longer, but no, I guess the snapping is over, and I guess we'll get to work. You guys doing okay? All right, good. Hey, so I don't know if you guys, hopefully you know this, but Santa's here. That's kind of good, right? And we have a lot of really, really fun things coming up this month, okay? So Santa's here today. We're excited about that. Next week, we're going to be preaching on the movie Elf. Yeah. I had this, okay, so I'm driving in the car yesterday with Joanna, and I was like, hey, babe, how am I going to do that? So we'll all be in this together. It'll be fun. So we got that. And then the next week, we're going to do Home Alone. We're going to preach on the movie Home Alone. So, yeah. Okay, so I went to go buy Home Alone this week to prepare for the message. And did you guys know there are 5 Home Alone movies? Like, there's some things that are just wrong, you know? And 5. Like, the last 3 don't even have what's the guy's name? Kevin McAllister. Yeah, Kevin McAllister. And so they don't even have him and some other kid, and it's like, I don't know. Like, I appreciate it, like a franchise's ability to try to make as much money as they can. Don't get me wrong. But I just feel like, I don't know. But we're doing the first Home Alone, not the 5th one, okay? Like, those aren't even rated because they didn't make it to TV. So I don't even know what those are for, but we're going to do that. And then we've got some really fun stuff. Ryan said that like 5 to 12, but I think if you have a preschooler, they can also be in the choir too, because we don't want to leave them out. So we've got a lot of really great things happening here at the church. And I think it's good to just pause for like a second and say, okay, why? Like, why is Santa here? Why are we preaching on Elf? Why are we using movies? And it's very simple. That we want to create a fun place where people can know Jesus better. And even as I think about like Santa, okay, so when I think of my childhood experience at church, I think of 2 things. I think of trying to go to the bathroom as many times as I could during service because I didn't want to be in the room. And I think of Christmas Eve, and I think of Christmas Eve being that thing between me opening my first present of Christmas. So I didn't have like great memories of church as a kid. And so what we want to do at New Life is we want to create space for our kids where when they think about church, they think, man, I really loved that. So yeah, I sat on Santa's lap, and he was like the real one. Like, we preached on movies, and we did this stuff because I just think there's something incredibly powerful in creating this space, not just for us, but also for the next generation where they love being here. And so that's why we do it. We're going to do it unashamedly, and we'll do something like this every December because we want to create these types of spaces here. But even just thinking about the spaces that we create, we're finishing up our series, Heaven, the happiest place on earth. And last weekend, if you weren't here, I wasn't on the stage. We had a panel. But I had the privilege of going to the other side of the building and teaching our kids and our youth the same message I taught here 2 weeks ago. And anytime you teach, like, kids, like, have you ever done it? Like, there's something about it where you just, like, don't, it's like playing Russian roulette a little bit. Like, you just don't know. And I'm teaching about heaven to the kids. This is at the 9:30 service. And I'm talking about how great heaven's going to be. And I'm like, guys, and there's the verse in Revelation where it says there's no mourning, no crying, no death, no pain. I'm like, guys, just imagine a place where everything you hate about, or everything about this life that you don't like is gone. And I said it just like that. So like I was carrying the emotion of the room, and this little boy blurts out. He's sitting in this section right over there. And he says, I don't like my brother. And I looked at him and I said, buddy, you're going to want him there. And then I just moved on. But you don't know. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. And here, like, in that statement, okay, there's something there, and I don't know that adults are going to say it that way, but if you look at a lot of the questions that came in about heaven, a lot of the questions were pertaining to, okay, but seriously, what about the relationships? Like, seriously, what about the things about, like, with people here that I don't like? Like, are they going to be there? How's that going to go? And so what I want to do is I want to look at the relational aspect of heaven in this last part of the series. But before I get there, I just want to remind us all of the timeline. Okay, so maybe you missed the first week, and this is, if nothing else, like this is just a little bit of a theological timeline for you to keep in mind. Okay, so if you are a believer in Jesus, your faith is in Jesus, it's evidenced by the way that you live your life, you're going to die. So when you die, this is what happens. When you die, you go to what I'm calling heaven, okay? That it's heaven, but this is not where you're going to spend eternity. This is not purgatory or anything like that. This is just to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Jesus tells the thief, today you're going to be with me in paradise. Like, you go there, but this space is not where you'll spend eternity. That you'll spend eternity in what I'm calling from the Bible, the new heavens and the new earth, which is right here. Okay? So everything that I'm going to talk about this morning is going to fit right over here in the new heavens and the new earth. Okay, so if I accidentally say heaven, because I could, I'm referring to this eternal state, just so that we're all clear. That's the fate of everyone who loves Jesus, what happens after they die. So to kind of keep with the theme of this series, I'm just going to look at some of the different questions that came in, and here's the first one that came in, or that we're going to look at today. Will people in this earth who knew me be able to recognize me in the new heavens and the new earth? So there are a lot of different forms of this question that came in. So will the people in this earth who knew me, will they know me in heaven? And the short answer to that, yes. Because we move on? No, there's a little bit more. Okay, so yes, they will be able to recognize you, but I want to talk a little bit about what you're going to be like, okay? So I'm going to use 1 Corinthians 15 to talk about this. This is 1 Corinthians 15, and this is Paul talking about you in the new heavens and the new earth. And he's talking specifically about your body, okay? And this is what he says. And what you sow in the body, that is to be but a bare kernel. So this is like the body that you've been given, perhaps of wheat or some other grain. But God gives it as a body as he has chosen, and to each kind of seed his own body. And so what you'll see Paul use in 1 Corinthians 15 is he uses the language, what is sown, a lot. And so he's talking about our body that we have right now, and he says essentially this is a seed. But the body that you'll have in the new heavens and the new earth is going to be what happens to that seed when it is put in the ground. So I'm just going to illustrate it this way. Okay, so this is a picture of a willow tree seed. It's the white thing right there. That is a willow tree seed. I think we can all acknowledge, kind of pretty, right? Okay, this is a willow tree. Okay, one of those things is far more interesting and impressive than the other, right? So the seed, interesting. The willow tree, awesome. Your body right now, it's nice. It's good. God gave it to you. The body that you are going to have in the new heavens and the new earth, it's going to be crazy. And even if you think about it, okay, so this is a tree compared to the seed. I mean, they're still the same. Like that tree was once a seed, that you know that seed is a willow tree, in the same way it is with your bodies. That you're going to be able to be recognized. It's just going to be a far more like exciting and better version of yourself. But Paul talks about it this way. He keeps going in 1 Corinthians, and this is what he says. He says, so it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. So like your body, when you die, it is perishable. But what is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor, and it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, and it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, and it has raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. So just so we're clear, like you're not getting a new body or a different body in heaven. You're getting a resurrected version of the body that you currently have. And what Paul is saying is he's saying the quality of your body is going to be transformed. And I would imagine that I'm guessing everyone in this room has probably come to this conclusion at some point in their life. There are things that you used to be able to do that you can't do anymore, right? Maybe it's knee pain that's hindering you. Maybe it's your eyesight's going bad. Maybe you've got tennis elbow, whatever that is. That the things that, we're kind of aware of that, right? That even like last night, I woke up 3 times with back pain. Like, it just happens sometimes. Like, there are bodies, there are things that we used to be able to do that used to be easy for us that aren't anymore. That I would even say it this way, that your body, from the day that you were born, was in a constant state of decay. That it's constantly going to death. Merry Christmas. But what Paul's drawing attention to here is he's like, yeah, that is the way it was, but that's not the way that it's going to be. That this body that you are forever attached to, with all its flaws and imperfections, that there is coming a day where everything about your body that you don't like is going to be gone. That I'm sure that we all have things about our bodies that we would want to change. Like for me, I have my wisdom teeth taken out 2.5 years ago. When they took it out, they pricked a vein, and for the rest of my life, I do not have feeling right here in my mouth. It's annoying. Like I'm sure that we all have things about our body where we're like, man, I really wish I could change that. Yeah, I don't really like this part. Yeah, I wish I would have gotten braces as a kid, but I was able to talk my parents out of it. That was stupid. Like, there's probably all something, right? Where we're like, that is going to be gone. That not only that, like it's going to be you. So maybe like you carry like some body image issues where you're just like, I don't like how I look. That for eternity, you are going to like the way that you look. For eternity, you are going to be proud of the body that you have. It'll be like going back to that high school reunion and like wanting people to see you. But for eternity, you're like, this is me. And just so we're clear, like, Paul's not talking about a good hair day where you're like, oh man, it's on point. Or that picture of you where the lighting is perfect and you're like, oh yeah, this is it. I'm going to show a duck face on this one. No, it's not like that. That what Paul is saying is he's saying, you are going to love everything about your body, which is good because you're stuck with it for eternity. So we know we're going to like it, but is there anything else that we can know about our body? And Paul gives this really curious little sentence here in verse 49. Talking about our bodies, this is what he says. He says, just as we've borne the image of the man of dust. So he's talking about Adam. So like all of us, we're kind of in the image of Adam. We shall also bear the image of the man of heaven. So just as we're like Adam, well, the day's coming when we're in the new heavens and the new earth where we're going to be like Jesus. And the cool thing is that we get a little bit of insight into what that's going to be like as we look at the end of John's gospel, because Jesus actually raises from the dead. He has his resurrected body, and he walks around, he does some things at the end of John's gospel. And so I'm not going to quote any verses for the sake of time, but if you're curious about what that looks like, just read the end of John's gospel. But just a few things that we know that we're going to be able to do, or what we know our bodies are going to be like. First off, in John's gospel, after Jesus raises from the dead, he shows up to a woman named Mary. Okay? And at first, when he shows up to this woman, she doesn't recognize him. Maybe because she wasn't expecting to see someone raised from the dead. But she doesn't recognize Jesus, and what Jesus does is he says her name, and as soon as he says her name, she knows who it is. So here's what this shows us about our bodies. That there's going to be an element there where we're going to be different, but there's also going to be a part of us that's going to be able to be recognized. You see another example of this in Matthew's gospel, in Matthew chapter 17. Jesus goes up on a hill, and it's called like this, the Transfiguration, for those of you familiar with the New Testament. And he goes up, and on this mountain are Moses and Elijah. And those who are with Jesus are able to tell who Moses and Elijah are. There are no pictures of Moses and Elijah. They've been dead for thousands of years at this point. But they knew who they were. So that you could even assume that when you have risen from the dead and when you are with Jesus in the new heavens and the new earth, that there will be people who you did not meet in this earth who you're just able to recognize. So we know that happens. We also know this, is we know that Jesus, that he shows up to his disciples. That he shows up to those who are closest to him, and there's a man named Thomas. And he's kind of one of those guys, okay? And he says, all believe that Jesus rose from the dead when I can touch his wounds. Like, so he's one of those guys. And Jesus is like, here. And Thomas is able to touch his wounds. He's able to know who Jesus is. And here's what that shows us. That when we raise, that we will have a physical body. That there's this idea that floats around, pun intended, that we are in this disembodied spiritual state. But what we see in the resurrected Jesus is we see that no, he actually has a physical body, and since he has a physical body, we can assume that we will too. That not only that, but we see a little bit later on, is that his disciples are out fishing in a boat, and Jesus starts cooking fish, and you know what they do? They eat. So Jesus eats a meal. Hallelujah. We'll be able to eat in heaven with no fear of romaine lettuce. That they sit there, they have a meal, they enjoy food. So we can know that these physical bodies that we have in eternity, that we're going to get to enjoy food. And, I mean, think about it. Think about, like, being able to enjoy whatever you want to eat that tastes perfectly without worrying about having to work that off. I mean, think of that. Like, you have this perfect body, and you're going to be able to eat perfect food. And you're not going to have to do your perfect workout to try to deal with it. I mean, seriously, we live in a world right now, and if you want to know how it's broken, like, the food that's good for you tastes nasty. Like, that is the product of a broken world. But in heaven, you'll be able to eat. You'll be able to enjoy that. There'll be this element there where it's like, wow, this is amazing. And one of my favorite, like, just parts as this ends, as we think about, like, our resurrected bodies, is Jesus finishes the book of John by having this conversation with Peter. And it's a real, like, heart-to-heart, where, like, they kind of deal with some of the stuff that, you know, Peter did at the end of his life. And what it shows us is it shows us that in heaven, there will be a relational component to eternity where we'll get to experience the depth of relationships. But there's this idea there where it's like you go to heaven, it's just you and God, and that's supposed to be good enough. And certainly God's going to be there, and he's going to be a great part. But those relationships here, that we're going to have the ability to connect with people in heaven, that there's going to be value and power in our relationships. Which leads us really to the next question that I want to look at, and it's this one. It's what aspects of our relationships will go from this life to the next? And so many questions came in with like this idea. So what aspects of our relationships will transfer over to the next life? And to answer this question, there's a curious conversation that Jesus has with some people who don't believe in a resurrection. And we see this in Mark's gospel, and I want to read this to you, and it'll show us some insight into what we can know about our relationships. It starts over, they're called Sadducees. And it says, and the Sadducees came to Jesus, who say there is no resurrection. And they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife but leaves no child, the man must take the widow and raise up the offspring for his brother. There were 7 brothers. The first took a wife, and then he died and left no offspring. So then the second took her and died, leaving no offspring. The third did likewise, and the 7 left no offspring. Last of all, the woman also died. Kind of a bummer life, okay? In the resurrection, when they rise again, whose wife will she be? For the 7 had her as wife. Okay, that is a very specific situation they're asking about. And here's what we know. Like, they don't even believe in a resurrection, so their heart isn't like, Jesus, I'm really struggling with this. Can you show me the truth? No, what they're doing is they're saying, Jesus, I'm going to stump you by giving you a really difficult situation for you to try to solve. And Jesus, being Jesus, he answers it in a way that not only answers their question, but it also speaks to us 2,000 years later. So let's look at it here. And so Jesus says to them, okay, so we picture Jesus being like this soft guy that like is afraid of confrontation. Like, that's so wrong. This is Jesus' response to these people. Is this not the reason you're wrong, because you neither know the scriptures nor the power of God? Okay, just to keep an idea with the Sadducees, they really knew the scriptures. They memorized them. And Jesus looks at them in their face and says, you don't even know the scriptures. He keeps going. For when they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels in heaven. Notice he says, like the angels in heaven, not becoming an angel in heaven. So there are characteristics that will be similar, but you're not going to be an angel. And as for the dead being raised, like the whole premise of a Sadducee is that the dead are not raised. And as for the dead being raised, have you not read, again, they've memorized the book of Moses. He says, have you not read the book of Moses in the passage about the bush? How God spoke to him, saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. You are quite wrong. That's Jesus. But in doing this thing, and in answering these questions, he gives us some insight into what we can expect with our relationships. Notice even what he says. He says, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So here's what you can know once you die, is that your individuality will continue to go with you throughout eternity. That you won't cease to be you and become someone else, but you will be you. It's still Jacob. Like, it's still Isaac. It's still Abraham. That in the same way will be with you. That we also know that, like, in answering this question, what Jesus is saying is he's saying that in order to really understand this, like, there's an element of, like, you've got to be able to trust in God's power. Because not only is he saying, your premise of saying there's no resurrection is wrong, but to assume that anything about eternity that God has made for you, that he is calling the new heavens and the new earth, to assume that any part of that is going to be a drag or weird, it really misses what that's going to be like. Because here's what we believe about these new heavens and these new earth. We believe that God made them for you. And so, if God made them for you and you're thinking there are aspects of it that I'm not going to enjoy. There are aspects of it that I'm not going to like. There are aspects of this that are going to make me bored. What is that saying about God and what you think he can and can't do? You're saying, God, I don't think that you can handle that. When he made your heart, he gave you those desires. He knows what you need, and he's making something for you. So part of that is a misunderstanding of what we think about that. But then, let's just be honest. The part of that grabs all of our attention is the part about marriage, isn't it? Like if you're happily married, you see that verse where it says, and we'll focus in on verses 24 and 25. If you want to put it back on the screen. So if you're happily married, you see that verse and you think, that's a bummer. If you're not happily married, you're like, yes! But what do you do with that? What does that mean? So we're not going to be married in heaven? Well, according to Jesus, no. But heaven's going to be better. So what he's talking about here is he's talking about heaven and marriage. Like a big part of marriage on this earth, okay, is procreation. And in heaven, like that's not going to be part of it. And so for Jesus to say, it's different than you think, I think that's part of what he's talking about there. But you could also assume that though it's different doesn't mean worse. But that your relationship with your spouse, in heaven, it's only going to get better. It's just going to be different than it is here on earth. Because if our relationships go with us into heaven, then we can be confident that in heaven, with resurrected bodies, with resurrected wills, that we're going to be able to continue what was started on this earth, and it's only going to get better. That your marriage will be better. That your friendships will be deeper. Because that is what happens in eternity. Do we know what it's going to look like? No, but we can know that it'll be good. Because here's what we know. We know that in this place, the new heavens and the new earth, there will be no envy or jealousy. Could you imagine what relationships on this earth would be like without envy and jealousy? That there will be no wondering what someone is thinking about you behind your back. That there will be nothing where you'll be like, man, I wonder if they really like me. That all of the things that have been broken in this world will be gone. And it's so broken now that we don't even really realize it because we're just used to it. But even as we talk about relationships, one of the questions that kind of kept coming around was, yeah, okay, I get that. But what about people? What about if someone really hurt me in this life? And they repent, they put their faith in Jesus, and then I'm going to be up there with them? Like, how do I deal with that? And so, like, I think and when I say really hurt, so I mean like really hurt. And to that, I would just say that there's a lot we don't know. There's a lot we do know. And one of the things that we do know is that at that point, when we are in the new heavens and the new earth with Jesus for all of eternity, that full justice will have been served. Full justice. And that those things in this life that hurt you, that are real, that caused you pain, that you have to realize that those things hurt and cause Jesus pain too. And he'll be up there with you. So you'll be able to have him there as a resource to process. But I have a feeling that because of everything that's different, it's going back to the seed and the tree. Like, the seed, it's similar, but it's different. And that person that hurt you, they're similar, but they're different. But you'll be able to rest in knowing that justice has been full served. And that's part of what's going to happen with our relationships. So we have these relational aspects. And the last question then is this. What do we know about knowledge, learning, and doing in the new heavens and the new earth? So, like, a lot of questions came in, like, is there going to be like a matrix moment where we just plug into something and like all the knowledge in the world comes to our brain, or are we going to continue to learn? And so I would say that, Scripture doesn't say a lot, but here's what we can know, is we can know that nothing in Scripture would indicate us thinking that there's going to come a moment in heaven where we just have everything figured out. Like, God is all-knowing, and we're not. So we're going to continually be learning in heaven. But just imagine this, okay? Imagine learning with a resurrected mind. Like, imagine learning without the things that hinder learning right now. Like, I would guess that you probably read something on Monday that you don't remember reading right now. Like, I would guess that as you have aged, that you have found that there are some things you just forget. That not everything is like riding a bike where you can just pick it back up and it's not that big of a deal. And so in the new heavens and the new earth, we're going to have this resurrected mind with the ability to learn and to understand things at a greater capacity than we currently can. And here's the beauty of it. It doesn't stop. That for eternity, you'll have this large capacity to learn. And you'll just keep learning. And I know that some of you, maybe you think like, you say learning, you think of subjects in school that you didn't like. And you're like, I don't want to do that. Well, what is it about those things that you didn't like? Well, you probably found the subject boring, or you didn't understand. And in heaven, nothing will be boring. And that you're going to have the ability to understand it because of your resurrected mind. I think for me, in heaven, what I want to do is I want to learn how to sing, because I don't know how. I want to learn how to sing. And I have this vision of heaven where I learn how to sing and I learn how to play the keyboard. And like rooms full of people come and listen to me sing Piano Man by Billy Joel. Like, that is just kind of my vision of it. And if you don't like it, get over it. It's my heaven. So that's what I'm saying. But like, think of that thing that you've always wanted to learn how to do, but you've never had the time to do it. That you will have an eternity with the ability to learn those things that you've always wanted to learn. That not only that, but in heaven, like, you're going to have a job that you're going to do, and that's where everyone got mad, right? You're like, I was cool with everything that you said, except for maybe the pets thing, and now the work. Like, you're telling me I have to work, like, so I'm going to work for eternity without a retirement? Well, and here's what I would say to that. Okay, yeah, work is one of those things that has been broken by the fall. Like, what happened? God cursed the ground and the toil of the ground. So we probably all have this element of work where we're like, oh gosh. But if you ever had a moment in your life where you said out loud, man, I wish I got paid to do this. Or have you ever had that moment in your life where you're like doing something and it was like you were in your sweet spot doing that thing that you're just like, oh man, this just feels right. That in eternity, like, that's what your work is going to be like. That there's going to be this element to it that is fun. You're not going to want to stop. And even for those of you that have a job that you love, because I know there's some of you here that have that, could you imagine doing your work without the anxiety that it produces? Could you imagine doing that thing that you love without the fear of failing and everybody laughing at you? That in eternity, that's what you're going to be able to do. So just to kind of recap, heaven, it is the happiest place on earth. But it is a place that God has made for you, where you will truly experience the joy of your soul, where you'll realize, like, this was made for me. That God, he did this for you. And as we get ready to kind of walk into this Advent season, and we think about Christmas, this is what struck me as I thought about heaven. God did not have to do that for us. I mean, if you think about us, think of how many times God could have just been like, you know what, I'm going to give up. I'm done. Think of how many times God could have said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to walk away from this group. But instead, what does he do? He sends his son to be born in a manger, to create a place where we get to create a way for us to get to the place where all of the deepest desires of our hearts are full. And as beautiful and as great as this manger is, that we cannot forget that in the shadow of the manger, there will always be a cross. And that cross was endured by Jesus so that you could go to heaven. And I would just encourage you as we walk into this season, this Christmas season, I pray that we'll think about the splendor and the glory of heaven. I pray that it will awaken things in our heart and make us excited. But I pray that we'll also reflect not just on that manger, but that we'll also look to the cross and think about all that had to go into us experiencing heaven. Let's pray.
Thank you for watching our services. If you have questions or you would like more information, you can visit us online at nlspringfield.com. We'd also love to have you join us at one of our Sunday morning services. We have programs at 9:30 and 11 for adults, students, and kids. We hope to see you there.